Hi weaving friends, I am so excited about this video today. It's going to be such a fun one. A friend of mine sent me, very generously, a beautiful children's vintage loom. These looms are really hard to come by, so I'm super grateful to have this one. And it's really interesting the way that it works. I have not seen anything quite like it before. So I can't wait to share that with you today. And I think a few of you are going to gasp in recognition and realize that you had one of these when you were a kid too. Now, if you are a regular viewer here, you might be thinking, hey, is she just going to be doing toy loom videos permanently now? No, absolutely not. But I'm really enjoying exploring a bunch of different toy looms and showing you all the different options that there are when it comes to weaving. I've got a lot more ideas up my sleeve, in particular for budget weaving or starting to weave with very simple materials. And of course, I want to make that accessible to all of you. Also, before someone asks what I'm wearing today, this is the Hug Me cardigan. This is one of my designs that you can buy in my design store. It's a digital download pattern, and it's perfect for days like today where the sun's out but the wind is a little bit chilly and I just needed that little bit of extra warmth on without committing to like a full sweater setup or anything like that. This is a rigid heddle loom pattern. I'll do a twirl so you can see the back of it. So it's based on the old sort of Hug Me tight cardigan blanket designs. And I did weave mine in wool. Okay, so I know you must be dying to see this gorgeous little loom. So let's get on with that now. So my friend sent me this loom in the original box, which is just amazing to still have that. And the loom itself is in pristine condition. So I know she's the kind of person who just really looked after stuff. But it's really interesting because it's got a little sticker, a little pricing sticker on it. And it says it's from Kmart and it says $25. I thought that was really interesting because $25, now let me think. I was born in 76. My friend is a fairly similar age to me. I think she's a couple of years younger than me. So anyway, these looms would have been available in, I imagine, the late 70s, early 80s, maybe right through the 80s. And I'm thinking in the early 80s, this would have been $25 for a toy loom. That's pretty hefty. Like, I would have expected it to be a little bit less, but when you see the kind of complexity in the setup of the loom, that sort of explains the price a little bit more. So what is it? It is the Hobby Girl weaving loom. It's by the company Tomy. Do you remember them? Are they still around? I don't know. They used to make all sorts of wonderful toys. They even had, I've been searching this online, they have a little knitting machine that looks very similar to this loom. It's all pink and white and gorgeous. I would love to have one of those as well. I don't know whether they're still around or if anyone has them, but that would be super cool too. Anyway, they made all sorts of toys and it's Japanese made. Wonderful. The box looks fantastic. It says on the front, design breakthrough, new concept in weaving which simplifies the setting up of the loom and produces great results quickly and easily. It really works. Well, that's interesting because when I pulled the loom out of the box to have a look at it, I thought, wow, this seems way too complex for a child. I thought even I was going to struggle to understand how it was going to work. I looked through the instruction booklets. There were 3 instruction booklets with it, which is great. And I thought, I just don't quite get how this works. But if you follow the instructions for setting up the loom and warping the loom and then weaving on it, you realize how incredibly simple it is, but it's just really clever. So let's have a look at the loom itself and I'll show you all the bits and bobs that came with it. So this is the loom itself. Isn't that cute? Every girl's dream, pink and white. It is entirely made of plastic, but it's like a really heavy duty plastic. I reckon I would call this the plastic of the 80s. Like this kind of plastic was used a lot. It's really strong and interesting to note. There's been no breakdown of this plastic over the years at all. It's, as I said, it's in fantastic condition. So that's the loom, and then it comes with 3 booklets. And the booklets are like, one's a basic setup, get you weaving on this loom kind of booklet. And then the other one is a project book. So it's got all of these project suggestions. It's got pre-programmed patterns to use and all of that. And then it's got this interesting third book, which is like an advanced book. But it talks in this book about tatami weaving. Now, I Googled tatami and all it really came up with was like a Japanese mat weaving technique that was a little bit more like basket weaving than loom weaving. But in the booklet, it says tatami and then it says or web face. So basically it's talking about weft face weaving. So the two types of weaving that you can do are like the basic pattern weaving that you can do by programming. We're going to go through all of that. I know it seems a bit foreign at the moment. And then the tatami weaving afterwards, doing a weft face weave with lots of colour and stuff like that. So I haven't actually tried doing anything from this booklet yet. I've just tried a pattern from this booklet. And so today I'm going to set up the loom. I'm going to program in a pattern that I want to weave and I'm going to show you how it looks. Also, these things came with the loom, 2 plastic shuttles. Again, that heavy duty plastic, and then it comes with a comb, and this is basically the beater because the loom doesn't have its own beater. Now let's have a look over the different parts of the loom. As I said, it's very simple in construction but very clever. So at the front here we have this bar with all of these ridges, and if you turn it, it has these little hooks and you hook your warp onto that. You will see that when I actually start to set up the warp. And then up here on this bar, we've got more ridges for the yarn to travel through, and that creates a flatter warp when we get to that. To move this roller bar at the front here, we've got 2 knobs on either side, and I just push them in and that releases the tension. So when they're popped out, as they are just in their neutral position, that bar is not moving. There's another one of these bars at the back that is exactly the same, and again you push that in to turn it, and it's got the little hooks for your warp to hook into. I actually really like this hook system because it allows you to tension your warp really well, and you can reposition the bar to make sure when you're warping that you get the best position for your warp to be looping around those hooks. This is the really cool part of the loom. It has this is like the design central. You pre-program the design in as you want it to be, as you intend to use it. And it's got all of the pre-programmed designs in one of the booklets. So you can just basically look up the booklet, program in the design and use that design and know what to expect. So when I said I haven't seen anything quite like this before, well, I haven't. It's like instead of heddles or shafts, it has these discs, these plastic discs, and they all sit on this cylinder, which is removable. On either end of the cylinder, there's a rod. So that's the rod from the opposite side. This is the rod from this side, and those rods are removable, and you'll see that when I start to program it. So at this stage, all of these discs are stationary, but I can move them, and I need to move them in order to program them by taking these bars out. You'll see that they have numbers all around, and also each of these discs has a different number of raised squares, and that is how you program your pattern. So before I can actually do any warping, I need to put the pattern in because you can't move that or change that once your warp is on. So that's going to be my next task. So in the instruction booklet, it takes you all through how to set up the loom and what everything means and how to read the patterns. So here it says the numbers written along the vertical edge show which number to select on the pattern dial, and the numbers written along the bottom edge of the pattern are the numbers you should select on the pattern discs. So that makes sense when I flip to the part that actually has the pattern options. There are a couple of pages of patterns to choose from. So they've got the charts, but they've also got these little little photographs of what you can expect your fabric to look like if you choose that one. So I think for today I will choose this pattern here. Pattern number 20. I like the look of that one. So if I go according to the instructions, remember the vertical numbers show which number to select on the pattern dial. Don't actually need to worry about that part at the moment. It's the bottom part, selecting these numbers, that I need to worry about. So if I look at these numbers, it says, oh, this one's in actually in fractions. Now that's interesting. So this one says 1, then 2/3, 4, half, 3, 4/1, 2, 4/1, and so on. This is a more complex pattern. Last time I did this pattern, and the numbers were just 4, 3, 2, 1, 4, 1, 2, 3. This one's a little bit more complex. So that's the one I'm going to try and program in today so that you can have a look at that. So I've taken the central cylinder with all the pattern discs out to make it easier to see what I'm doing. I also need to take these rods out so that I can then move these discs, because I need to set the pattern in now. There are 2 rods, one on either end. And I'll take this one out as well. Those will go back in order to hold the pattern, but not right now. Okay, so on each one, each disc has a number, and then once you have the rods out, you can move the disc to whatever numbers you want. So I need to look at my pattern. The first disc needs to be on number 1. So I'm going to line all of these up with the number 1 on the large dial at the edge. And that way I know that I can keep my pattern consistent all the way across. So number 1 is first. So I'm going to line up my little raised square there that only has 1 square on it with the number 1 at the side. Then the next one says 2/3. So when I look at the instructions, when it says 2/3, it says it's the face between 2 and 3. Okay, so on the next disc, I need to be looking for the 2 and 3. There's the 3, and here's the 2. So I want the face or the flat edge that is between 2 and 3. So that's pretty cool, because that gives you even more patterning possibilities outside of these numbers, if you can go halfway between numbers and that sort of thing. All right, so that's that one. And then I need to do number 4. So my next disc, I'm just going to hold on to these discs that I've already done, because I don't want them going anywhere. And really, I think this is the only part of the entire setup process that is actually a little bit tricky, that a child might struggle with, and even an adult might struggle with. Now, it's about keeping all of these discs straight once you've done them. I think probably I could insert this rod into the first part to keep those ones steady that I've already done. I think I can do that. And maybe I can just keep working that rod in as I go so that they continue to be held. Okay, so we've done the first 3 discs. The next one is 1/2. So in my instructions, it says that is the face between 1 and 2. Easy enough. So go to the next disc that I haven't moved yet, and I need to go between face 1 and 2. So there's 2. I'll keep going. There's 1. So this is the face that's between 1 and 2. There we go. So I've done those 4 now. Let's see. That rod doesn't seem to want to go in further. So I'll just try and keep my thumb there as a marker to know which discs I've done so far. The next one is 3. Okay, so just need to find number 3 on the next disc. There's 4. Okay, and always keeping these lined up with the number 1 so that I know where I'm at. Okay, that's number 3. Next up we've got 4 over 1, so that is going to be the flat edge between number 4 and number 1. So there's 4, I need to go this way because there's 1 down there. So that flat edge there is what's going to stay, and then there's going to be number 3, so that's number 2 there. There's 3. That's where I'm up to. Then 1 and 2, between 1 and 2. So there's 1. So I'll keep going to the flat edge that I get to before I get to 2. Try and keep these lined up as they should be. And then number 4. So the next disc will be 4. Some of these patterns will be a little bit lengthy and others will be more simple. Just depends on what you want to do, which pattern you want to choose. And then 2 and 3. This is the last one in the sequence. Okay, there's the flat edge between 2 and 3. So I've done that much, and that means that I start at the beginning of the pattern again. And so that's 1 repeat of the pattern there, and then I'll keep going until I get to the other edge. So you don't need to watch me do all that because it's a little bit tedious, a little bit time consuming, but I'll show you what we do once we have all of the right numbers programmed in. Yay, my pattern is all programmed in. And I did end up using that rod and just pushing it slowly in as I went across to hold everything in place as I did it. So I can just fully push that in now. And then I can set this back where it belongs on its little rest here. Then the instructions say to pop the remaining rod through a hole here, which is at the number 1. And then pop it through the hole that's at the other side of the one. And this is supposed to help with the warp tension because we are now ready to warp. I've decided to warp with 2 yarn threads this time. The last time I used an iron weight wool and I just used a single thread and it was really quite sparse. So I want to try and fill that in a little bit more. This time I'm using 2 threads of iron weight. So I'm just going to use them together. The first thing is to just tie them onto the hooks. So I want to position the hooks so that when my yarn is traveling that way, it's going to be holding onto the hook properly. I will do almost a full warp this time. I'm going to go around this second last hook here. So I'm going to make a loop in that. And just tie the knot nice and tight. Just keep the loop with my little finger so I don't lose it. Tie it too tightly. There we go, little loop. And then that can pop around that hook right there. I actually want to bring that hook just a little forward. So pressing in at the sides just to about there so that then I don't have to worry about my warp possibly popping off because it's too far back. So I'm just going to take that through the ridge that lines up best with that hook. Then I'm going to come up and I'm going to go into the pattern disc that seems to line up best with my warp. So this is kind of just guessing, you know, should I do this one or should I do this one as far as how straight my warp's going to be. And I think I'll go into this second disc here. Now if we flip around to the back, we've got the hooks waiting there as well, and I need to reposition them so that they are sort of facing the back. And so I'm going to hook around and then come back. And then I'll go through the second pattern disc. So from now on, I'm going to be going through every pattern disc ridge. That's what's going to give me my pattern ultimately. Okay, so I'm just winding off a bit of yarn, coming through the next ridge. And then you don't go around every single hook, you go around every second hook. So this is the hook that I went around first. I'm going to skip the next hook and go around that one. Then I'll go up through the ridge, through the next pattern disc that doesn't have any yarn in it yet. And then the same at the back. I'm not going around every hook, I'm going around every second hook. A little bit bulky with 2 strands of iron, but it's completely manageable. Okay, through the ridge, skipping the next hook and going to the next one. I think this is going to be a much better warp. It's nice and thick, laying very close together. So that's what I was after. Because I thought my pattern was nice last time, but it didn't stand out as much as I wanted. And also I had to be really careful with the beat because it was, otherwise the weft would pack down too much because the spaces between the warp were so large. See how simple this is? It's just going around the hook, in the ridge, through the next space in the discs, round the hook at the back, skipping one, back through the next disc, and then repeat. Come down to the front, skipping one hook, and you can get a nice tight tension with this too. But also once you're done, if your tension is a little bit loose, as long as it's consistent, it needs to be consistent. But if it's a little bit loose, well, you just tighten up with your bars. There's a front bar and a back bar where you can do tensioning. So it's beautiful. Also on this loom, you might be wondering, is this the full length of warp that you can do? No, it's not. It actually shows you in the instruction booklet how to warp it a little bit differently if you want to put a long warp on as well. If you want to do a scarf or something like that. That's a major bonus because a lot of these smaller kids looms, they don't necessarily have that capability. Well, at least the frame looms don't. So that's a really good thing. And that warp looks pretty easy to do as well. It's basically a direct warp, but you get to determine the length. I don't know what length of yarn, what length of warp you could get on a loom like this. Perhaps I will test that eventually, but for now I'm just wanting to show you how cool this is and how it works. It doesn't take very long at all to warp this either. I'm being extra careful because I've got 2 strands of yarn. I don't want any of them separating out and going into the wrong discs because then that would affect my pattern. So my first thought when I saw this loom and I saw this cylinder was that it's a little bit like card weaving or tablet weaving in a way. You know, it's different, but that's what it reminded me of. It's like you're not threading through holes in these discs, but you're threading on certain positions, and then you're using the bar to turn the positions, which changes the position of the loom. And that's how it provides the shafts. It's really interesting. If you had one of these as a kid, let me know in the comments. I'd love to know how many people had these, how widely they were distributed, because although it was a Japanese company, I know that Tomy was at least very popular in Australia. You wouldn't walk into a kid's toy store without seeing that brand in some way or another. Oh, the toy stores of the 70s and 80s, they were really something. I really miss that era in a lot of ways. But the toy stores were great. They were just like a wonderland. It's a shame that I was obsessed with Barbie dolls rather than things like this. Anyway, I'm making up for lost time now. No Barbie dolls in my home now. Getting there. This bar, this rod that is here right now, that comes off when we're ready to weave. It's really just a warp stabilizer, because the threads, you can probably see here, they all go into the discs at different heights, and so this bar means that when the warp's coming through there, they're all exiting, at least, at the same height, if that makes sense at all. Okay, checking that I have been through every disc so far. Oh, and in addition to any of you having one of these as a kid, do any of you have one now? Either that you still have from when you were a kid, or that you have obtained since. That would be interesting to know too. Such an easy way to warp, just looping around hooks. Love that. Oh, and let me know as well if you have the little knitting machine. I would love to see that, because it looks so cute. I'm thinking maybe not as many of the knitting machines would have survived in their, you know, original format, because you're quite a bit harder on a knitting machine than you are on a weaving loom generally, because the mechanism of the carriage going back and forth for every single row. Whereas something like this, it doesn't even have a beater. You're doing the beating manually. All right, we're almost there. And yeah, we'll go through that last bit there. I'll go through that disc, and then I'll skip the last one on the edge like I did with this one. Okay, so now it's time to tie off again. So I'll cut a generous length of the yarn there. And that's got to tie off around here. I found this a little bit fiddly last time. Let's see how I can do this time. I'll try making a loop first with a knot, and see if I can kind of tighten up the loop this way. Hey, that's not a bad idea. It kind of works. So I can hook that around the hook and then continue to tighten that. There's one thing you don't want in weaving is loose warp threads at the edges. Oh no, that popped off. Let's see if we can get it back. Let's see. It's just difficult tightening it and holding it there at the same time so it doesn't pop. Okay, I've got it on, and I want to do a double knot, and if it just plays nice and stays there, then we'll be good. Okay. I think that edge thread is slightly less tension than the rest, but it's not too bad. Pretty good. The last thing I have to do before I can actually start weaving is just take this rod out. And there you go, you can see how they're all at different heights now. And then I can just, it's got like a little storage hole in the side here for the extra rod. If I've got that lined up. So it can be a little bit tricky to get it in there. You might have to just kind of adjust this a little bit. No, it's not wanting to go in. It's only gone in halfway. Not sure why that is. I know that last time I struggled to get it in a little bit. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I can leave it out because that's just a storage hole. It doesn't actually do anything with the function of the loom. So now I'm actually almost ready to weave. I just have to load a shuttle. But before I do that, I'll just explain a little bit about how these dials work for the pattern. Remember that the pattern I chose was this one right here. And so this is where the side numbers become important. These were all the programming numbers down here, so that I'm done with that part because the discs are all set and I don't have to do anything else with them. But now I'm going to be looking at the side numbers in red, and I start at the bottom and work my way to the top, and then when I finish that, I come back down to the bottom and go back through. So the first number is number 3, and on here there are little arrows. There's an arrow here and an arrow here. Currently they're pointing to number 8. So for my first one, my first row, I want them to point to 3. So I'm going to bring it around and make it go onto number 3, and that provides me with a little shed. Now this shed is it's a little bit hard to see at the moment, and if that happens you can kind of play around with it a little bit for the numbers that are closest so that you can get more of a determined shed. But I do have my shuttle wound, so we might just start weaving and then I can continue to explain these as you see me weave them. Okay, so with my shuttle, I actually have some iron weight yarn here, but I don't have a big supply of this weight of yarn because I tend to use thinner yarns. So I had this color and I had this color, and that's pretty much all the iron weight that I have. Now I thought if I start weaving with this color, even though it's the right weight, that's probably not going to show up on camera so well for you. So what I did is I've got a sports weight in this purple, which is an Australian 5-ply, and I've doubled that as the weft, which makes it roughly 10-ply, which is the same weight as this iron weight. It's an Australian 10-ply. So we'll see how that goes. It's a lot darker, so you should be able to see the pattern a lot better. Now I'm going to be referring to my paper pattern here that I've got in the booklet, but we already know that the first row is number 3, which I've got set up here, and I'm just paying attention to where the threads are because it's a very, very small shed at the moment, but we'll see how we go with that. So that's my first row, and then I'm going to change. The next number up is number 8, so we'll go to that. It's best to use both hands to turn this cylinder because it can be a bit stiff once you've got your tensioned warp on there. Okay, so number 8, and I'm going to tuck my tail in at the bottom. Okay, and then I need to bring in my comb, of course, because I need something to beat with. All right, so that's our first row. Now, also because of all the different numbers on all the different discs, where it's not just plain weave, so we're going to have to go around edges manually at some times, so that the thread doesn't draw in too much and we end up with an absolute mess at the edges. So I'll just go around the edges manually when I need to. Okay, so I'm paying attention to my edge there. I don't want a heap of draw in with this, so I'm leaving a curve on the weft, and I'm also being gentle at the edge there. So I'll go to my next number, which is number 5. You can turn the cylinder either way, backwards or forwards, and I'll beat my last pick in. I'm going to beat relatively gently at the moment. I kind of want the weft to just be sitting, not smooshed down too far. Otherwise we might get a pattern that's too weft heavy. Okay, so my edge is fine here if I just go underneath there, so I don't need to do anything fancy with that. Okay, the next number up is number 2. Isn't this cool? Look at how the threads change. It's just a really unique way to make shafts, basically. So I will beat that with the comb. And I'm seeing some sort of pattern here, but it's not really obvious yet what it is. Again, my edge thread is fine, so I'll just go straight through there. Okay, where are we up to? 2, so then we can go to 7. And beat my last pick. Okay, after 7 is 4. So it's got all the patterns in the booklet, but of course you could make your own as well. I don't even know really how many patterns you could make with this, but I'm thinking quite a few. Now to number 1. Yeah, because in addition to those numbers, the raised edges, you've also got the flat edges that you can use, so that increases the patterning possibilities. Now here's an example of where I need to do something different with the edge, because if I go back into the shed, that's just going to pull back in because the weft came out underneath that edge thread. So I'm going to go in over that weft thread, but then I'm going to dive into the shed. And then that'll catch on the edge and we will have acceptable looking edges. Okay, number 1 and then number 6. And beat. All right, what are we doing with edges this time? That's fine. The weft has come out over this warp thread here, so we can just go straight in. I think the purple was a good choice. You should be able to see that pretty nicely. After 6 is number 1. If I am getting in the way of these shots, I will, don't worry, I'll do some extra shots after from different angles. Number 4. It's a little bit hard to get the right angles when you're going to have your arms in there. So here's another example. The weft has come out over this warp thread at the edge, and so I'm going to go underneath it and then into the shed. Okay, that's number 4. Then what have we got? Number 7. And beat. Again, I'm going to have to go over the edge thread here and then into the shed. This 7 shed is a little bit unclear, I have to say. It's like, well, okay, I think that's it. Go under those ones. Some of the sheds are really quite small, so it's tricky, but it'll become obvious in your pattern whether you're weaving the correct sheds or not. 2 and beat. Yep, I'm definitely seeing the pattern now. I'm going to go over this edge warp thread here and then into the shed. And just like with the rigid heddle or whatever, it's good to stay close to where the shed is widest, which is way up here with the shuttle as you take it through. So I'm almost completed one weaving sequence, and then I go back to the beginning. So that's on 2, and then we've got 5 and one more after that. Beat. Nice, I can see the diamonds. I can go straight into that shed. It's a little bit unclear again. Let's see. That's better. Just takes a little extra rotation sometimes. I'm getting a bit of draw in on the right here that I can notice, so I'm going to pay extra attention to that. And then our last one in the weaving sequence is number 8. And then, as I said, we go back to the start again. So I can beat that. Lovely diamond shapes appearing here. Okay, the 8 is a little unclear. So I'm not sure if that's should be going down or up. Let's see. Okay, so that's the last row in the sequence, and so I go back to the start and I start at number 3. I'll just beat down that last pick so that we can see the full sequence there. I think I can afford to beat a little bit harder because I've got that nice thick warp now. So with the next sequence, I will try to beat just a little bit harder. I'm still not going to be beating it right down, but just a little bit more because some of these warps are quite spaced out, which is okay, but it's going to be a less stable fabric. So I'll experiment with that. Okay, I have opted to sit down for a while. You know, I like my sit down weaving sessions. Oh, my poor aching back, I just have to do it. So I know that I said this yarn is a bit too light for camera, but I want to give it a try. I want to see how it looks. I think it'll show up the pattern enough, and then I can switch back to the purple afterwards. But let's just try it, because we like to try things out. We're weavers, aren't we? All right, so we are set on 3, so I just need to tuck in my little purple tail there. And then I'm going to bring in this lighter blue. Can't remember what this yarn was called. Maybe Shadow or Moonlight or Moonflower. Could have been any of those. Who knows? Okay, into my first shed for the second repeat of the sequence. And then the second one is number 8. So I'll turn to number 8. Tuck my tail in. And then I can beat. You don't have to necessarily beat into the next shed, but I like it because it's like beating on a closed shed. Holds the weft nice and firmly in place. And remember I said I'm going to beat a little more firmly this time. We'll see how that goes. It's all an experiment. Just wind off a little weft there. Fix up my edge, and I'm being particularly careful on the right hand side because that's where my drawing is happening with my dominant hand. Next one up is number 5. Okay, that's number 5, so now we can beat. This doubled iron weight warp is definitely the way to go with something like this. Okay, after 5 we've got number 2. And beat. I think this blue is looking good. Even if the pattern doesn't stand out as much, I think they're very complementary colours. The warp is like a, oh, what on earth is it? It's kind of like a beige colour. I wouldn't say it's coffee colour, it's not that strong, but it's that gives you an idea. Okay, number 7. And beat. Now, if you go looking for one of these looms online, I wish you the very best of luck because they are very difficult to come by. I've been searching because I was interested. And I found very little. I found some sold ones that were sold some time ago, but I didn't see any that are currently for sale. It's probably the sort of thing that you're in the thrift store one day and you're like, ooh, that looks interesting. It's just randomly there, maybe from a deceased estate or from someone cleaning out their kids' stuff or their grandkids' stuff, whatever. But it's, yeah, I think you'd have to be lucky to come by one. I have to make sure of the shed that I'm in. Number 1. Yeah, it's definitely harder to see the pattern, but I do think that the colours are lovely together. 6. And beat. Okay, after 6 is 1. So another way that you get more patterning while still having the same warp setup is by changing these numbers around on the side dials to weave different sequences. That would be quite interesting as well. You'd want to be doing a repeating sequence like we're doing here that repeats over and over so you can build up pattern. But also if you look at the charts in the book, that can give you a really good idea of how you could very simply, with some graph paper, or if you're nifty on spreadsheets or anything like that, how you could quickly put together some sort of pattern that would that you would be able to use with a loom like this. Now, where are we? There. And then 7. What do you think? Do you like the higher contrast more than the more subtle pattern? Sometimes it's just a matter of personal taste. It's not really about what's correct or incorrect. It's just, well, I like that or I don't like that, or I prefer it the other way. But I'd be interested to know. I guess on the camera it's going to be tempting for you to say that this one looks much better because it probably does from where you're sitting. We'll have some close-up looks at the end. And then, yeah, you might be able to judge a little better. Number 2, and beat. After I've finished with this lighter blue here, I will do the purple again, so it'll be wedged in between the purples. So when we have a final look at the whole thing at the end, then you'll be able to see both. After 2 is 5, so I've only got 2 more to do. You see you build up your weaving pretty quickly. Of course, we're using thick yarns as well, that helps. So again, I'm definitely seeing the diamond pattern there, but not nearly as contrasting as here. So with the next purple that I do, I'm also going to try beating a little closer together like I have for the blue. And that will be another way of looking at it. So when we finish, because I think I'll probably just have room for one more band of purple, because there's not a lot more weaving room there. When I finish, you'll be able to see the looser set of the purple, the blue with a bit more weft tension, and then the purple packed down a little more as well at the end. So we'll see three different experiments. Hey, this looks great. I can see the diamonds. I like it. But this number 8 is a bit problematic. Because the sheds are not as clear for some reason. Not sure why that would be. Okay, that's the last one. So I'm just going to go to the start of the sequence again. So that will be ready. And then I have to reload my purple shuttle. So I can cut my light blue yarn there. Tuck it in so we're all ready to go once I've got my purple reloaded. Alright, so I'm going to do my last weaving sequence in the purple, doubled up again, and a little bit more of a firm beat. If you don't want to watch me weave the weaving sequence all over again, that's fine, absolutely no worries. I'm not offended. If you've had enough, that's okay. You might want to skip to the end, towards the end, where I'll show all of the results. And if you do want to keep watching me weaving, then good, let's go. So we're on number 3. Next number is 8. Eight's that difficult shed. And I'm still not really sure why. Could be something I did, could just be one of those things. All right, so number 8. It's a little better this time, but it can be hard to know, is this meant to be in the upper shed or the lower shed, you know? If it's not quite clear. Still, the pattern's turning out well, so I must be doing something right. Okay, after 8 is 5. And then we can beat. Now remember, I'm doing a bit firmer beat this time. So when I'm doing a firmer beat, I'm pretty much talking about the wefts touching. So the weft that I just beat down on the first row, I want it touching the first row. Whereas down here where there's a bit more space, the weft rows aren't necessarily touching each other. But when I say touching, just lightly, just resting on top of, not smooshed down on, because then we get a real weft face weave. Now, number 5 we're up to. and then we go to number 2. And I'll beat that, so I'll make the wefts touch again. And you can kind of assess that as you go too, like if you've been beating a certain way and then you're like, no, look, there's just not enough space. That's one thing that you want in a somewhat balanced weave anyway, is you want a little bit of space. You want the weft and the warp to be showing in different places, but if you beat down really hard, it's just going to be weft. Okay. Careful with those edges. Sometimes you'll notice me doing this. It's just like when you've got a temple on your work, for example, some of you might not know what a temple is. It's basically a stretcher that you put on your work. You usually use it in floor loom and table loom weaving. It keeps those edges kind of stretched out to what they should be, the width that they originally were. So when I do this, I'm kind of doing like a temporary temple kind of thing. I'm going, well, you know, this is what it was stretched out to, so I'm going to let the weft kind of relax into that. I don't do that with all kinds of weaving, but this kind of weaving, it can be handy. All right, so that was our 2, and what do we go to next? We've got a 7. Let's beat that down. In case you are brand new to this channel, I always kind of assume that everyone who's watching has been here forever. I don't know why, it just kind of feels like that, like we're all old friends. But I know that when I do something like a toy loom video, I do actually get an influx of new subscribers who may not have been here before. So if that's the case for you, I am a weaving teacher and I have an online weaving school. Let me pause to go to number 4. And so if you're interested in knowing more about weaving, you might want to visit my weaving school. You will find a link in the description box below. I do classes for rigid heddle, Inkle loom weaving, table loom, floor loom, and I think that's it for now. And then if you look on my YouTube channel, I have a bunch of different, like so many, I've got over 400 videos here on this channel. On all different types of weaving, on weaving tips, on yarn, on, I don't know, just so much. You probably know better than I do at this point, because I'm like, oh, I've just got so many videos. I don't even know, like the old woman in the shoe, except my children are videos. So we went to number 1 and now we're beating down. And then I've also got a second YouTube channel, which I just started recently, which is more of a kind of vlog channel. It's more of talking about life and all the ins and outs, and it's from a Christian perspective. So if that is something that you might be interested in, I'll also link that down below. That channel is called Providence Ridge. Now we're up to number 6. And I'll beat. I think so far I'm liking this firmer beat a little bit better than the looser beat that I was doing to start with. I think it makes the pattern look a little more cohesive, maybe. And we'll see when I'm finished. Of course, I'm sitting close to it, looking at it that way. You're looking at it a different perspective. That's why I always say to people when you're weaving something, make sure you hop up regularly and look at the piece from a different angle, because the different perspective can change so much what you're seeing. Another thing is, if you take a photo of your work, you just hold your phone, whatever you have, take photos from a couple of different angles. It is amazing. I don't know why this happens, but it's something to do with at least my brain. There's so often that I won't pick up an error, and then I look at a photo of what I'm weaving and I'm like, oh, that sticks out like a sore thumb. It's an error right in the middle, you know. I don't know how that works. There must be some science behind it. that I'm not aware of. That we're up to number 1. Okay, number 4 is next. Yeah, I definitely like it with the weft packed down a little more. Number 7. Just having a little trouble seeing the shed there too, so yeah, sometimes if you adjust it, it just moves those threads a little bit. Oh, and I didn't go around the edge. So that's what happens if you don't go around the edge. It pulls in and it won't look nice. So now what have I done? I'm going to take it back. Undo what I just did. This needs to go under there. You know, undoing mistakes is not fun, but at least you can undo them. It's like having a little eraser. You just erase what you just did, start again, no one knows the difference. It's very handy. All right, so around, I'm really not sure how I missed that edge before. Wasn't thinking clearly. All right, after the 7 comes the 2, almost at the end of the sequence again. And almost at the end of the piece because I'm getting near the top. So the option to be able to do that longer warp is such a good one with a loom like this, because otherwise you'd be limited to very short pieces. Can you imagine an entire scarf done in a beautiful pattern like this? And you can do that. Okay, after 2 is 5. What I've shown you today is one of the more complex patterns from the booklet. There are much more simple patterns as well. And as I said, I want to try out that tatami, the weft face weaving. So if you're interested in that, let me know in the comments and I will do a follow-up video with this loom and the tatami or weft faced, because it really does look quite different to this. It's not so much about the patterning as it is about the colour with the patterning. It looks great anyway in the booklet, so I'm eager to try that. The way that I usually do follow-up videos is I ask in a video if people are interested in me doing something further with whatever it may be. And if I get, well, number one, if the video itself gets enough views, but then also if people comment and tell me that they are interested in knowing more or exploring more with me, then it's worth my while doing the video. If the video doesn't get many views and I don't get many comments asking for it, then I probably won't bother. Anyway, I'm thinking with this, well, I'm really going to be doing that on my own anyway. I'm going to be wanting to explore that technique, so I will do that. Now, that's 3 weaving repeats, but this first one was quite spaced out. Now, doesn't that look better? It really does. Another reason why I'm always saying to people, Do a sample. When you're trying something new, do a sample. It'll tell you exactly what you need to know. So you can think of this as a sampler, and this has told me that I like this one best. The doubled weft yarn with a slightly firmer beat. That is my favorite out of all of these three that I've tried. So I've still got a little warp left here. So I'm going to continue weaving until I get close enough that I can't weave anymore. But I won't film that part, but I will now go on to show you how this all looks as a finished piece, how this all looks what we have woven together today. Thank you so much for joining me today and for supporting me as I go through all of these fun adventures in weaving and I get to explore all of these wonderful things. Thank you again to my friend for her generosity in sending me this loom that I am sure I never would have been able to obtain otherwise. I hope that this video was really fun and interesting for you. If toy looms are of interest to you, I have an entire playlist for that, and news alert, you can actually really weave real weaving on toy looms. If anyone tells you any different, don't worry about them. Just keep going, keep weaving, and keep having fun. Check out the playlist of the other toy looms. I'll put it right here for you. Hopefully I will be back soon to show you some tatami weaving on this loom as well. And until next time, happy weaving.